You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible.
All right, folks, if you're drafted to the NFL, it should be a great day, but New England Patriots kicker Justin Rohrwasser has had a hell of a problem for the last week. Of course, he's received a lot of criticism for a tattoo he got when he was 18 years old. The tattoo on his left forearm resembles the logo of a far right-wing militia group, the Three Percenters. Rohrwasser said that he had a different understanding of the tattoo's meaning until recently, when someone on social media linked the tattoo with the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. Now, he initially told reporters that he would have the tattoo covered up, but recently decided that he will get it removed. Of course, this is being talked about back and forth from a lot of different people. And of course, Jason Whitlock came to his defense by saying people like Jamel Hill, Bomani Jones, and others don't know what they're talking about by calling this group racist. Listen to this.
Well, at the end of the day, as someone that prides myself on being a journalist, what's happening to this kid is unfair. It's the role of the media not to be unfair to individuals. Again, there's no proof that this particular group, the Three Percenters, who none of us had heard of until this controversy, or most of us, 99.9%, had never heard of. There's no proof the organization's racist. The group is pro-guns and pro-limited government. That's been pretty clear. And so for Jamel Hill, Bomani Jones, or anybody else who has no other credibility, no other traction other than unfairly tarnishing people with charges of racism, yeah, maybe they won't let it go, but it should end. And I do think the conversation and the remarks from his teammates, I do think they are valid. When people besmirch your character in any way, you call in character witnesses, and the words of people that actually have played with this young man is more valid than Jamel Hill on a Twitter feed or Bomani Jones firing off an irresponsible column on The Undefeated. The words of the people that actually have interacted with him, because trust me on this, if they ever ask me about some of my Ball State teammates.
I got enough of Jason Whitlock. All right, let's bring in sports journalist Howard Bryant. All right, Howard, look, you've covered sports. You've covered Boston sports very well. Just your take on this whole deal. First, that he says, Jason, that he thought that, this Justin Rohrwasser, he thought that this was a military symbol when he first got it. Then later said, oh, I didn't know what that was. Just what do you make of all of this?
Well, first of all, I'm throwing a 15-yard flag on you, Roland, for throwing Jason Whitlock on this at all in the first place. That's 15 yards at least.
Well, well, first of all, you always got to show buffoonery anytime you can. We do have a segment called Crazy Ass White People, and so I might as well have one called Crazy Ass Black People. But go ahead.
No, my original feeling is that I think that when you're looking at him as a character, as a person, you're responsible for your own actions. And I think that what does it say about you if you're putting things in your body if you don't know what they mean? And what does it say about the vetting process of the NFL, where you can go and you can ask all kinds of questions about the personal lives of these athletes, especially the black athletes. You're going to talk about Des Bryant's mother, and you're going to talk about these different athletes whose parents, family members have drug issues, but you're not going to comment on this. Essentially, what you're talking about is it's a free pass that these guys have because they're not paying attention. And you don't even need to extrapolate much further than that in terms of what the priorities are. And, I wasn't really surprised by the number of people who sort of fell over backwards to protect or defend him. I just look at it this way. How many people put things in their body that are permanent and they have no idea what they mean?
Right, and look, first of all, I don't have a tattoo, never gonna have a tattoo. You ain't got to brand my ass. I know exactly who I am, and I can remember my name. But the reality is that, and then, of course, when Whitlock spouts up, oh, well, no one ever heard of this group. Well, first of all, the Southern Poverty Law Center characterizes nearly 600 extremist groups. And so it's not like you're walking around and you're memorizing all 600 extremist groups. And the reality is these extremist groups that Jason just acts like is no big deal, those are the people who were in Michigan today. Those are the people who are in the state capitol in Wisconsin. Those are the people who parade around with their guns, flashing their guns. And in fact, again, in Canada, they consider them the most dangerous extremist group there. To your point, the NFL, it's amazing how they will go deep into your family. Talking about drugs and your associates. Look at Bill O'Brien questioning who DeAndre Hopkins has around, trying to bring up Aaron Hernandez. And so, yeah, this is going to get dealt with. And when the public sees it, they're going to say, hey, what's that on your arm?
Well, exactly. And I think that's the issue that people aren't paying very much attention to is this is also a labor issue in terms of the entire interview process when it comes to the draft, the entire process on how you treat these black athletes and how you treat the white athletes. And also, I mean, let's face it, if you're looking at the NFL, and, you know, you and I have been having this conversation for years anyway, just the level of subtle and not very subtle anti-blackness in the sport. Let's not forget Riley Cooper with the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's not forget the anti-Kaepernick sentiments. Let's not forget what's happening here with the Patriots. I mean, there is absolutely a pattern with what takes place in that locker room and who gets scrutinized and who doesn't get scrutinized. And it's something that needs to be looked at much, much more on the part of the journalists covering these teams, simply because at the very least, you've got a double standard in terms of the evaluation process.
And look, first of all, let me go ahead and say this here. I mean, I don't have to defend him. He can defend himself. But frankly, Jason was idiotic because what Bomani said in his column was very simple, that more questions should be asked. Simple as that.
The point.
And especially when we see how many of these coaches and general managers, they will ask a black athlete a whole lot of questions. In fact, a lot of people are still pissed off with the NFL for what they did on draft night, where you swear we had to bring up every draft pick whose mama or daddy was in jail or who had a drug problem, who had gotten arrested. And I'm sitting there going, what the hell does that have to do with draft night?
That's right. And if it's that much of an issue, if you're going to sort of create storylines and because what they're doing is that they're furthering the same NFL as savior, debtor in jail sort of golden ticket narrative that they like to push, that that race in the United States is essentially a lottery. And that if you make it big, if you've got the talent to be in the NFL, you can put the class past that you may have behind you. And so that puts the NFL in this positive light of being the savior, when it really is just completely offensive. What it really is why are you in my family's business in the first place? And if it's that big an issue for you, if you're going to try to create an issue, then why are you drafting me in the first place? It's insulting to the families, and instead what they're doing is they're using it as part of the NFL and the sports storyline, especially when it comes to black athletes in general. If it weren't for us, you'd be in jail, or you'd be dead, or have some drug problem.
And you know, there's a line here that I love that Bomani said. He said, but guys like Rohrwasser rarely have to answer for themselves. And when they do, they get patted on the back like he's mentioned someone named Burton, a black reporter, did by telling his audience he didn't think Rohrwasser was a racist and telling viewers to give the kid a chance. Okay, so let me sort of unpack this, because, see, this is part of the problem that people have. First of all, I don't see anywhere in here in this article, Jason, I think you're dead wrong, where Bomani called the kid a racist. It's not in the article. But here's the problem with this whole deal. Whenever we have these discussions, they're framed in racist, not racist. If he does have a tattoo of a group that's an anti-government militia group, you damn right you should be asking those questions, because these are the same people who went after Colin Kaepernick for wearing socks.
Well, and also
for wearing a Fidel Castro shirt. So why does he get to be questioned, But this kid can't be questioned about that 3%er tattoo, which is a hell of a lot different than wearing a T-shirt.
Well, let's also go one step beyond this as well. As much as we may want to frame this in a Kaepernick versus Kaepernick sort of question in terms of treatment versus treatment of others, let's also look at it from a standpoint even outside of race. And that is where things get to be problematic because people just stop listening the minute they hear a race. You have a player in the NFL who is affiliated with or who is supporting an organization that essentially supports antagonism, if not overthrow, of the federal government. Right. I mean, so you're looking at the Bundys and the Wacos and all of these types of people and all the militia stuff that you've got up there in Idaho and all of this. Is this what you want represented? And can you imagine if you had an African-American player who was even marginally, if somebody walked in on draft day with a T-shirt of the Black Panthers or of Bobby Seale or something, it would be disqualifying for that player. That player would be ostracized and attacked, and it would be a national story. And so even if you take the racial elements away, look at the characteristics or look at the positions of this organization that he has a tattoo of, and he's affiliated with them. And you can take the black people out of it, and just he needs to answer for that himself.
And it does speak to, again, in terms of how these things are viewed. And the bottom line is this here, whether folks will own it or not, and that is, when you're African American, there's a much greater scrutiny. You have to explain everything. You have to go through everything, as opposed to how other folks are. And I think that's what we're seeing right here. And let's just be clear. They're sitting here talking about why this kid can't. Oh my God, what he's going through, how he's being treated. How about the kid from the Dallas Cowboys who was a sure first-round draft pick, top 15 draft pick, who the night before, all of a sudden they said murdered somebody. Mm-hmm. And he plummets. And then all of a sudden, my bad, he wasn't involved.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other point, because what is taking place here? The framework of all of this is that if you're black in this game, you need to be grateful that we're bringing you into this sport. You are immediately at a disadvantageous position. You're not simply an employee. You're not simply a player, but you're somebody that we're saving. You're somebody that needs to be grateful, because what do they always say about playing in the NFL is a privilege? And those standards don't exist for other players. And that is the pressure. That is that sort of level of anti-blackness that I'm talking about when you go into the NFL and basketball as well, and baseball to a lesser extent, but especially football. That mindset is, we're doing you a favor for being here. Otherwise, you can go back to the hood, which is the reason why they feel so, these coaches feel so emboldened to be so brazen in their questioning. And as we saw on draft night as well, you could see the racial components of this dynamic where you look at all of these executives. They're virtually all white. We already know the owners are virtually all white. And this is how they treat the black workforce. And essentially they gave a pass to a white kicker.
Let's talk about that. I want to bring my panel in as well. So let's put Howard in the 4-box with them. And that is Howard. Speak to this, and then I'm going to go to the panel. There are a lot of black folks, there are a lot of black coaches and others who were pissed off on draft night because you saw the isolation, and what you saw is you saw white after white after white after white after white after white coach or owner or top exec, and they could not add a little color in the back.
Not this time. Not this dynamic. No, and I think this is the thing. After we saw in the Super Bowl, when you saw the Chiefs win the Super Bowl and Eric Bieniemy not get any offers and not get elevated as he would have had he been a white coordinator, is that everybody is starting to see what everybody in the game knows. They're not hiding it. They're letting you know what this dynamic is. And once again, we talk about having power. We talk about players having power or coaches having power, and you realize that they don't really have that much because you are in this sort of bullseye where they don't have to hire you. And so you can talk about all the Rooney rules as you want. You can talk about diversity and inclusion and all of these different things. But the bottom line is watching that that dynamic on draft night, looking at those demographics, they're telling you exactly what this game is. It's white owners, white coaches, black player.
And the bottom line, Greg, I think back, as we talk about the tattoo, but also this, remember when Cam Newton got signed drafted by the Carolina Panthers? Their owner, the first thing he told him, tell me you don't have any tattoos. Mm-hmm. It's one of the first things he told him. And when you saw that, I mean, people need to understand, when you see NFL owners who are Trump supporters, who are Republican donors. I was talking to one person who, I won't the person who told me, but this person, a very rich African American, had this Obama shirt, and this person said, they wanted this person to go into the suite of Daniel Snyder, and they said, you're going to wear that? Because he doesn't like Obama. And this person said, I'm not taking my damn shirt off for him. They said, I can go to another suite. That's what you're dealing with here. And so when you see these white male politics, that's the NFL, Greg. That's real.
Sure it is. And, you know, one of the things I really respect about you, Brother Bryant, is that in the tradition of a Ralph Wiley or my brother Bill Rhoden or Jamel Hill or Bomani Jones, because you are writing about sports, there are sports writers who will shy away from the political issue. But what you did in this book right here, Full Dissident, that end where you start talking about us being renters in this country, when I look at that boy's arm, I get the white supremacist symbol of the 3%ers, but I also get the white supremacist symbol of the liberty or death and the American flag.
Well, that is funny. That's the
help
other
us
point.
understand how all of those operate in a field of violence that are signaling this is a white man's country. And all of those symbols mean the same thing in that young man's mind. Right?
Well, that's right. And that was the thing that got me, and Bomani and I were talking about this. I said it wasn't just the 3%ers tattoo. It was the other two around it. The rest that we could see also that made it very, very clear what his position is and where he's getting this type of the types of attitudes. It's not an isolated incident. And I think Bo made a really good point, too, when he and I were on the phone about this, where he had said he was also allowed to have that tattoo. And are you honestly going to tell me that nobody questioned it when they saw it? No one said a word about it? We all know what we're talking about here. And I think that this is this period, Roland, that we're in, right? That we're in, that they are making it very clear who this country belongs to. And they're not hiding it. That's one of the things about Full Dissidence that always, that and the book before that, The Heritage, but especially with Full Dissidence, I tell people all the time that the work that we're doing right now, it's not Watergate. We're not digging up all kinds of sealed documents. It's not the Pentagon Papers. They're not hiding it. They're telling us directly in our faces how they feel about us and who this country belongs to.
Erica, when we start, first of all, Erica, you got a question for Howard.
I do. So having not read your book, but certainly going to be picking that up very soon, but did read William Rhoden's The $40 Million Slave, and thinking about in that context, what is it, and you mentioned that, really where the power structure does lie. So to a new crop, a new generation, excuse the word crop, but for a new generation of athletes, what do you think should be the permeating message as they consider moving forward, perhaps in their sports career, be it football, baseball, basketball?
Well, it depends. That depends on whose camp you fall in. Do you fall in Carmelo Anthony's camp, or do you fall in my man David Ortiz's camp? And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I remember when David Ortiz was with the Red Sox, and he and I were talking, and we were talking about how, from a black standpoint, obviously we know the numbers in baseball are so low. You're down to 7%. There are 68%. There are 68 African Americans in the entire game of Major League Baseball on the field, and the Latinos in the game are looking at 25 to 35%. And so you've got this huge number, but you don't have any Latino managers. You've got a couple. You've got you've got Davey Martinez, my boy Davey, over with the Nationals, and you don't have that many against the percentage of the Latino players in the game. And David said to me point blank, that's why I tell all these young guys, get as much money as you can and get your black ass out of the game. That's David's camp. You're not going to get any opportunities. That what's going to happen in this sport, and in some ways, it's the way the Michael Jordan looked at things, which is you're not going to get a real seat at the table. Get as much money as you can. You're going to be compensated. You will get money, but you won't get power. Right. Now, if you go to the Carmelo Anthony camp, when he and I talked about this, his feeling is that you need a new consciousness. You need that these young black athletes need a new consciousness. They need to understand that money can translate into power as long as you don't spend it all on cars. Use what you have and one day create. His feeling is that if the will is there, one day it's possible for these players to begin to make these connections with the really powerful people and to have an owner, a player-based ownership, to have maybe a rival league that's player-owned, something like that. Carmelo looks at it very, very differently. So on the one hand, you have some players like David Ortiz, like Poppy and those guys who say, look, we're not going to get anything, but you are going to get money, spend it, save it wisely, and then move on to your second act. On the other hand, you've got Carmelo who says, if you play this properly, there's a role here for you that nobody sees, but you've got to be willing to take the risk to do it.
Reese.
Yeah, my comment was more so about how the NFL bent over backwards to prove to white America that the NFL is patriotic, to try to counter Colin Kaepernick's message of protest, and yet they seem to have no sense of duty or responsibility to prove to Black America that they do not agree with white supremacy, that they don't want to take any action to a person they aren't remotely invested in. This person was a draft pick, and it's just simple for them to say, you know what, he has too much baggage, let's move on to somebody else. Why? Yeah. What do you think that message? What should we do? I mean, I know people don't have the appetite for boycott NFL again, or the NFL might not even have any sports for a while. But as consumers, when are we as Black people going to harness our power and say, you need to prove to us that you are not disregarding our consumer power?
Well, I don't think that there's a third way. I think that what people understand is money. I think what owners understand is money. And I think that as long as you look at the Black spending power on merchandise, maybe not nearly as much on tickets, but certainly when it comes to merchandise and it comes to the NFL package and it comes to all the different ancillary revenue streams that the NFL gets from the Black community, you have to be willing to make a choice to cut that off. I mean, when we talk about boycott, I always go back, you don't want to go back that far into history, obviously, but it is still very instructive that you can't have protest and you can't have boycotts and you can't have you can't make a financial stand without taking a risk. That the Montgomery bus boycott lasted a year. They were willing to make that sacrifice through the winter, through the summer. They were willing. What are you willing to risk? Are you ready to say, you know what? The only language you understand is me turning off my TV and me not buying that Lamar Jackson jersey, and that this is the language that they have to understand, and this is what I'm willing to do. If you're not willing to do that, it's very, very difficult to get anybody to listen, because at the end of the day, you gave them your money.
Again, folks, what we're dealing with here is an understanding of sports and power. And so I'm going to have Howard back. Every Thursday we have, of course, we're going to have a new segment. Well, not new. I talk about it all the time. It'd be Roland's Book Club. We're going to have that every Thursday. And so we're going to come back. We're going to have another day. We're going to talk about your book in specifically and some other stuff I definitely want to cover. But Howard Bryant, I appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Ben, my pleasure. I'll call you.
All right, sir. We'll do it. All right, folks.
Every single night, we've got some of the top Black experts. You're not going to see them on cable news or broadcast news because you swear Black people aren't experts when it comes to this health crisis. That's why we have this show and why we do what we do every day on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Joining us right now is retired General Russell Honore, the nation's first Black Surgeon General, Dr. Joycelyn Elders. John Hope Bryant, he is the founder of Operation Hope. Senator Kamala Harris of California, Dr. Sadrina Calder, retired General Lloyd Austin, Congresswoman Karen Bass, Commissioner Omari Harding, Bureau President in Brooklyn, Eric Adams, Dr. Joseph Graves, America's Wealth Coach, Deborah Owens, Dr. Corey Hebert, Patal Saul, Howard University student, Pastor Jamal Bryant, Dr. Christy McDowell, Benja Ajilore, senior economist at the Center for American Progress, Gilda Daniels, again, author of the book, The Crisis of Voter Suppression
in America. 4 stars, General Kip Ward. Dr. Oliver Brooks is president of the National Medical Association, president of the American Medical Association, Dr. Patrice Harris. Joby Benjamin, Dr. Alexia Gaffney, infectious disease specialist. Dr. Georges Benjamin, executive director of the American Public Health Association. Malcolm Nance, family medicine physician, Dr. Jen Caudle. Dr. Tashaka Cunningham, a molecular biologist. Kat Stafford, she's a national race and ethnicity reporter for the Associated Press. Dr. Wayne A.I. Frederick, who is the president of Howard University. Congresswoman Yvette Clarke from the state of New York. William Spriggs, AFL-CIO economist. Andrea James, executive director of the National Council for Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls. All right, let's go to Capitol Hill. Congressman Gregory Meeks, Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson of Texas, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar, mental health clinician Jamie Singletary, Prince George's County State's Attorney Aisha Brayboy, as well as Dylan Hayrie, ACLU Justice Division strategist. Dr. Cindy Duke, she is a virologist. Principal Steve Perry of Capitol Prep. Health and wellness specialist Dr. Yolandra Hancock. Desmond Meade, president of the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. Cliff Albright, who is the co-founder of Black Voters Matter. Michael Harriet with The Root. Mina McWhorter, founder of Love by the Hand. Dr. Julianne Malveaux, economist, president, Emerita Bennett College. Coroner Michael Fowler is the mayor of Atlanta. Keisha Lance Bottoms, mental health therapist Suzette Clark. Justin Gibney, attorney and political strategist, and Bishop Vincent Matthews Jr. Dr. Suzette McKinney, CEO and executive director of the Illinois Medical District. Dr. Leon McDougall, president-elect of the National Medical Association. Jana Bailey, mayor of Moss Point, Mississippi. Mario King. We're going to keep driving this thing to make sure our people are fully aware, safe, protected from coronavirus. You're getting the top medical experts, the top business experts, top political experts, top religious experts, because that's why we do what we do. Unapologetically and unfiltered. Ain't nobody else in the black media space doing what we do. Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.